Today, we're very excited. This week, we are so excited that we get to chat with such an accomplished actor from the world of voiceover. You've probably heard her voice 1,000 times and didn't even know it. She's done national commercials, video games, TV promos, movie trailers, documentaries, and more. Everyone, please welcome the incredibly talented Riva Lombardi.
Hey.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming on. So where are you geographically right now?
Oh, goodness. Geographically, I am on Eastern Standard Time. I'm currently in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, lovely. Now, is that where you're from originally?
I am. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and then I went to school in New York, and then my husband moved us to Los Angeles, and then we arrived back in Toronto for my daughter's birthday a week before lockdown last year, and we have been here ever since.
Wow.
Whoa.
So you've kind of gone everywhere. Wow, that's amazing. How was growing up in Toronto with your interests and, I'm sure this was something that you kind of wanted to do as a kid, was it?
Yeah, I was into theater. That's where I started. And so,
Right.
there's I ended up, my journey started I went to arts high school. I started working in some TV when I was in high school, and then I ran away from home when I was 17. I moved out to LA. And
Wow.
then I ended up getting a job on a cruise ship, but I traveled around working as a singer, dancer, actor on cruise ships for
Now,
about
was the TV, was it like TV shows or was it Canadian shows? What happened there?
Yeah, it was two different Canadian TV shows. And because I went to an arts high school, sort of like a fame, they came right to our school to cast. So they just, came in and asked our principal, like, we're looking for a couple of kids. And they brought us in and they picked a couple. And so that's how I got cast on my first show. And then the second show, the same thing, they came into the school and we auditioned for them. So,
It sounds
but
like a total scam, doesn't it? Like these people coming into a school, we're looking for 3 beautiful ladies to join this incredible show, like.
Yeah. Yeah,
But it was
no,
real. That's terrific.
it was real, and I just had small parts on those shows, but
Did you join the union then?
no, I didn't join the union then because they were both well, one was non-union and one you had the option because you had to do a certain amount of things to be able to join. But even though they were small shows, I was like, I'm the bomb. Here I am in high school. I've already got these credits. I got cast in a theater show downtown when I was 16. I was like, I'm good. So let me, run away and go out to LA. It didn't work out.
Well, you were already your way. My God, all I did was You Can't Take It With You and Picnic, for God's sake. My high school drama, McHale Gymnasium, where they were playing basketball while we were rehearsing, and you're on television. That's amazing. So you ran away from home. Did you hop a train or how did you get out there?
I hopped in my 81 Buick Regal that I had got from my grandmother. And
It's heavy as a train. Yeah.
And I drove across Canada first because, Toronto's on the East Coast. I drove straight across Canada. And then by the time I got to the end of Canada, I'd run out of money. So I ended up having to get a job on a farm, on this apple farm, picking apples to make enough money to then make it down the coast to California.
Tommy, Riva is chock full of surprises. When we were in school together, she's very poised and almost like unassuming at first, and you just think she is so fucking professional. She has everything going.
Right.
And then as the year went on, these little nuggets would drop and the whole class would go, Riva?
Yeah.
And she go, guys, there are things about me.
You sailed a pirate ship for 3 years in the Pacific?
She goes, guys, there are things about me that you don't know. And we're all going, we've been in school for like 5 months. How did we not? It was fantastic.
Oh, how fun. What an adventure. I bet you saw some wonderful things passing through. So you ended up in Vancouver?
So Kelowna, BC is where I stopped, where I ran out of money and got a job on a farm there, and then moved down the coast.
How incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Very, Very exciting. And so then you went down south, you got to LA, and
Yeah,
what
and of
happened
course
there?
I had no money and I didn't have papers to work in the US. I was Canadian, so
Right.
I just went there. I didn't think about all these things, and I didn't have any connections. I had no family, I had no friends there. So I did not last very long, and I ran out of money pretty quick. And then there were auditions for cruise ships, and I
There
got a
are
job.
only so
Yeah.
many apple orchards that you can in LA County.
Yeah.
So you got on a
So
cruise ship.
yeah, so I got on this really awesome cruise ship where it was a British company, so we rehearsed in just outside of London, and
Nice.
then I got on a repositioning cruise. So it's one of those, cruise ships sometimes suck because you're just doing the same thing week after week. Like it's a 7-day rotation. But my first cruise was a 3-month cruise where we started in Cyprus and then we went through the Mediterranean, the Greek islands, and the Canary out to the Canary Islands and ended up in Morocco. So I had this like huge 3-month
Oh
repositioning
my
cruise, which
God.
was incredible. So I got to
Which
see
isn't
all these.
it's not a year. So you're
Yeah.
still, even at the end of that 3 months, you're like, dude, we just got started probably, right?
Oh yeah. And then the way that particular company worked, you did a 4-month contract and then you had 5 weeks off, and they would pay for one flight to and from during your 5 weeks off. But most people were like, I'm not going to go home for 5 weeks. Let's go travel. So you could get one flight to anywhere. So then that, sort of sprung up the traveling. And I ended up doing that between that company. And then I worked for Disney for a little bit, Disney Cruise Line, in and around for around 4 years. And then, yeah, then I lived in Cincinnati for a year, and then started my journey back to Toronto, back to figuring out my what I was going to do now with all this traveling and where I was going to go with my career.
And where, what did you think? What was going in your on in your head when you did the cruise ship thing, you did the LA thing? What was coming into your head about what was gonna happen for you?
I mean, for me, I was like, I got to make a living. I got to make money. And so I was just trying to audition for anything I could. And, I did a kids tour. As soon as I got back to Toronto, I got a kids tour. So I did this, those fun kids shows that are just like larger than life that every musical theater actor starting out, I feel like has done some sort of, iteration of that. And then I got a job at Second City. And I got the lead role in a show that they were doing, and then that is what sort of propelled the rest of my career, I would say, because that's where I first got scouted for voiceover.
Interesting. Second City. Now that they have, obviously they had Second City Chicago. That's where I was. Second City Toronto. There's Second City LA, which is no more, I believe. Tony and Tina's Wedding, I believe, was that show. Now they had Tony and Tina's ETC in Chicago, and then it got uprooted. I don't know if that's when it went to Toronto, but that's not an easy thing to get on a Second City tour a Second City theatrical. I mean, you have to really fight tooth and nail and be there for years. I mean, a lot of my friends were there for years before they ever even got an audition to go on Tourco, let alone get on Tourco, or a theatrical. It's a very exclusive kind of family, right? So how did you
Yeah.
get into it? Were you through the conservatory there or what?
No, I was not. I had no improv background. And so, for the majority of the characters, you really needed a lot of improv. But for the two main characters, for Tony and Tina, it was mostly scripted. And so they were focusing on actors for those two roles. And so quite often I found that they didn't really bring up people in the cast to those roles. They cast those roles out. And so I just fit. I was Italian. I was the right age, right height for the Tony they already had. And so it just was sort of perfect timing. And, I did my one audition and I was in.
Great. That's awesome.
And then I
So they
ended up
do the
doing that
kind of
show for.
improv around those two characters then, right?
Right. Yeah. So then the rest of the characters have a lot of leeway to do a lot of interaction and improv.
Yeah.
And so they sort of, and I learned so much from them about improv
Oh
because
yeah.
I did, yeah. And I got to do some free Second City classes, workshops, because they would bring in somebody to do workshops with us here and there. During rehearsal periods, we would do rehearsals, say every 5 months, and they would bring in somebody to do a workshop. So I got to learn a lot about that stuff. But this is, for me, the biggest thing. I mean, other than my group of friends, which it was a big cast, and I really made such a solid group of friends doing 6 shows a week for 2.5 years. But one day I was doing the show, and afterwards, I got changed quickly and went outside. And there was a producer there from a radio station, CBC, which is a pretty big radio station in Canada. And they said, you have a really good voice. Have you done any voiceover? And then I said, no, I haven't. And they said, would you come and do a radio drama at our radio station? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So that's how I got my first voiceover job. And then things just went wild from there.
And isn't that crazy that interaction quite literally set the trajectory of your whole career?
I had never thought about voiceover. I'd never realized that it was a career. I didn't know anything about it. And I remember after I got the first gig, I was like, that was really fun. It was, super cool. I got to be a character and I got to work with all these other people. And at the same time, I was putting in so much effort into my on-camera career. I was, doing my headshots. I was auditioning for every student film I could. I was putting all this effort into that portion of my career. And then all of a sudden I was being handed voiceover jobs like, hey, would you come audition for this video game? Or, hey, would you come do this? And I was putting no effort inside. I wasn't really interested in that side. I didn't know anything about it. And I really had after I booked Resident Evil, which was a pretty big video game and a pretty big booking for me as a voiceover actor, I was like, wow, what if I shift some of my attention from all of, pounding the pavement in this on-camera stuff that I'm really getting nowhere. I've only booked a few things here and there. What if I start shifting it to the voiceover side? And so that's when I did that. And then I got an agent within the first week. I booked a national commercial campaign, and then things, just kept going.
They did indeed keep going. You did Toyota, Lipton's Iced Tea, Dove, Panera, Dasani, commercial spots, McDonald's, Lego, Red Bull, Axe body spray, and then, yes, Resident Evil, the video game, Destiny. You really started to make a name for yourself. But that doesn't just start out like that. I mean, to be asked to come into the sound booth, it's not an easy thing just to jump on copy and just start doing it as you've been doing for years and years and years. No, it takes time. So how did you, when you began, I'm sure there was some raw talent there, some natural instincts that came through, but did you have to work hard at the instrument and the application?
Yeah, I mean, I went to theater school, really. And, my whole background was theater, and the theater training as a performer, that gives you the base to do whatever you need to do with your instrument, right? And so I feel like when people ask me about voiceover and should I take a voiceover class and this and that, like, do you have an acting background? Do you have a theater background? Because that is really where you need to start. And certainly there are some exceptions to that. And I have friends who do book narration and that. But really that, I think that really, those are the people that companies want to hire is actors. They don't want to just hire voices. And so for me, that was it. But I have to tell you, a lot of the credits that you just mentioned were my American credits. Now you have to remember, I'm still talking about Toronto, Canada, which, our population in Canada is 30 million, which is the same population of California, right? So I'm still in a relatively small market. So I'm doing Resident. I did Resident Evil out of Toronto. I did Red Bull. My first Red Bull was out of Toronto, but then I moved to New York and wanted to get into the market in New York. And that was a whole different world. And you think all of these performers, you come from all these different states all over the US, but when you get to a big market, things completely change. You can be as successful. I was in top 5% earnings at my agency in Toronto. I came to New York. I am nothing.
It's a whole new ball of wax.
So did you have that feeling of doing so well in Canada, right? And then you moved to New York and you're kind of like, oh, I am a small fish. Fuck the pond in an ocean. Like, oh, how did you navigate those
Yeah.
waters of really gaining traction here in the States?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So, I got there and I hit the ground running. I sent my demo. I was like, I've got this kick-ass, portfolio of work. I'm going to easily get an agent. I'm going to get myself booked. I'm good to go. And crickets. I heard from no one. No, like not one agent would even return my email or even give me nothing, not even time of day. And I was feeling depleted. And I think as a performer, well, in so many different, I mean, I was listening to a radio DJ today and they were talking about how they got a job on a morning show. You have to be creative in everything. So many things are competitive these days. You really have to be creative. And so I just started trying to be as creative as I could. I remember I went on LinkedIn and I would spend hours on LinkedIn and I would try to find all of the actors, the voiceover actors that were doing really well, that were in New York, and I wanted to see who were they repped by. Okay.
Nice.
Then I started to reach out to them and said, "Look, I'm just starting out. Do you have any advice for me?" And that's all I asked because I don't know these people and the majority of people didn't even respond. But one person responded and he said, I recommend you reaching out to Jana Gottlieb. It's like, I've never heard this name before. This is the only lead I have. Okay, let me look her up. I looked her up. She was a voiceover manager. Like, do voiceovers even have managers? It was kind of random to me, but she also did classes and coaching. And like, okay, well, look, this is the only lead I have. She was like $250 for one session. My husband's like, you don't have any other reason. Like, you have nothing else. So you might as well try. So I had this hour-long session with her, and she picked me apart. She was like, your website sucks. Your demo is small town. Like, you don't really have it. She just totally, crushed everything. And then said, but I'm teaching a class. And maybe you could, come and do my 4-week class. Like, okay, well, if you have something to teach me, maybe I'll come and do your 4-week class.
As you're dressing your wounds.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
all right, maybe I'll talk to my husband. And
So, I mean, I had no other leads. And normally I wouldn't have done that because I was like, is she taking advantage of me? Like, she's
Right.
just stripped everything
Yeah.
away. Does she just want my money? I don't know. But I do know that I have no other leads. So let me give it a shot.
And
So
sometimes you're
I,
unaware that somebody is seeing the potential there for you, but the packaging or, whatever may not be, at that time by New York standards or something. And it's like, no, you have a great instrument and you're very talented, but welcome to New York. And we need to like up this to get you to that place where you can start working.
yeah. And I think that you never know what is going to lead to what. So I
Exactly.
think it's so important to say yes and. In improv at Second City, that was the main thing
Mhm.
we learned was yes and. Yes and. So and I mean I try to live my life that way, not just in my career, but also in my day-to-day life because it really opens up doors for you and it opens up your life. Start just saying yes to things. And even if you don't know what it's going to lead to, but also you don't know what it might change in you. Sometimes just having an experience, even if it's a crappy experience, it might give you a new point of view, or it might change the idea, some idea for you, and give you a new direction. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's sort of just good to go, just to go try things. So I took this class and it was at Star Tracks Studios in Midtown. And the engineer who was supposed to lead the class, he had to back out, and I guess last minute. And so the owner of the studio subbed in for him. And so he was going to sub in for the classes and be the engineer while she taught the class. And we all got to go in the studio. And at the end of I think it was maybe like the third or fourth class, the engineer, the studio owner, Roy, he said to me, "Gosh, you have a great voice. Do you have an agent here yet?" And I said, "No, I sent my demo to everybody and nobody has responded." He's like, "Let me try and send it." It's like, "Oh, okay." So I gave my demo to Roy. He sent it to the exact 5 agents, the 5 top agents that I had sent it to. And do you know that I got a call from every single one of them? The same
Wow.
demo. I got a call from everyone and I got an offer from every one of them.
See,
And so
You're like,
in the
oh, which one
end,
am I going to choose?
in the end, I got to choose. In the end, I got to choose. And so I realized I wasn't even getting to them. They weren't even listening to my demo. And I think, as an actor, you put yourself out there so much and you're like, why didn't they call me? Or why didn't I, book that job? And I got to tell you, sometimes the job doesn't even go. Sometimes you audition for a commercial and you know what? The commercial doesn't even move forward. They don't even cast anybody because there's been a change in plans, or they lost funding. The advertising agency's no longer working with them. Or sometimes the agent, you go to the spam box, or the assistant just clears everything out before the agent even looks at it. Sometimes it doesn't even get to them. And so in that moment, I realized nobody had even listened to it. And as soon as I had a referral from somebody who was respected in the industry, and
Yeah.
they need gatekeepers. It makes sense. They're having all of these crazy people, message them constantly,
Yeah.
and they needed a gatekeeper, and Roy was that for me.
sounds like you got a what they call return of investment. I mean,
Yeah.
you paid for that class
Yeah.
and then you got repped, and who knows where that got you. And it just drives
Yeah.
home the idea that, like, screw the booking,
Yeah.
forget the job. Like, there's something happening in the underbelly of everything that we're doing and every place that we go and every person that is in those places.
Yeah.
And it has to do with things like this, like someone listening, and they have power in a certain way and they're going to help you. And had you just thought of it as a class and an extra $1,000 and you're just like, what's that going to do, you would have lost that opportunity. So the yes and is such a wonderful thing that the improv community teaches, and that a lot of people who've been through that kind of stand by. And it's not just yes, it's yes and, which means I'm going to go for it, and then I'm also going to work really hard, bring it home, do what I need to do, leave my ego, be graceful and decent and kind and whatever, and all those things that you did. Because what if you were just like in self pity and just like, it's never going to happen in that class? Would he have been attracted to your light? Who knows?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
obviously. So yeah, I love that. And I'm a big believer in forgetting the booking, go into that room where all those people are, and there might be somebody that you're always going to know for the rest of your professional life.
Yeah.
That's the point of going into those rooms.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. That's wonderful. It sounds like things were, I don't want to say easy. It's never easy, but it sounds like you were on a trajectory and a force behind you that was kind of just pushing you along, and things were coming across your path that like are inexplainable.
Well, I mean, I don't consider myself a lucky person. My husband is a lucky person. This guy, he's just like horseshoes up his ass. But I feel like it's
Your
about
husband is the loveliest person. I love your
it's a
husband.
it's about saying yes and being proactive. Like, I would
Right.
never have even found her if I hadn't have spent hours messaging random people on LinkedIn, and finding and doing it in such a way that I was being non-intrusive with them. I was really trying to look for advice and being open, and I just would never it was all of the work and the, like, being innovative and creative about the
Yeah.
work. So I don't think I have been lucky in any way, but I think I've just put a lot of time into it.
And like what you said, Riva, with being creative about it, because we talk about this aspect on the show all the time, is, when you are kind of in a position where there's really nobody on your side, and it's so much of this is up to you and what you do with it. And it's, this wherewithal of, okay, how am I going to drive this ship? What am I going to do to keep momentum going and not just wait for people to come to you? You have to get creative. And it's those little things of reaching out and planting seeds here and there, because you never know what's going to come around. But it is, so much of it is, it's up to you. You have to be the driving force at a certain point when you don't have people to help you along the way.
And I think, I think in between, as I was building my career, I've always been studying. I've always been taking class. I've always been meeting coaches, and not necessarily even for to do these voiceover workshops. I would book them for an hour, or for, say, can I do a private? And normally people book a private to like work on an audition or a script, and I would stand in the booth with a list of questions and be like, I don't have a script right now, I just want to ask you all these questions about the industry. And so I would pay them to like interview them about, okay, what books should I be reading as a voiceover? Who should I be reaching out to? What are the top animation casting directors? Like, I would just use that time to get all the answers, and then I would take all that information and use it to be, creative and get myself further out there.
They're
How
like, is
many
this
other
all we're
students were doing
doing
that, you
today?
wonder? Yeah, just a
Yeah,
Q&A?
this is just an
Okay.
interview. I'm paying for it. You're gonna answer
I
whatever
know.
the hell I
Well, that's
want.
that's
They're like,
it.
okay.
Exactly. If I'm paying for it, then listen, you got to sit there, you got to answer my questions, because, if you're going to send these questions to somebody afterwards, they're not going to take the time to answer them. They're busy. They're
Yeah.
off the clock. They're on their email. Maybe they'll
course.
answer one question. But hey, I got you in the booth right now. I'm paying for this hour. I'm going to use the hour how I want to use it.
I wonder
Yeah.
how many of them thought that is a really smart thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm
Or are they just
thinking,
like,
if I
is that girl
were
crazy?
no, if I were any of those people, I would say this is a business-minded person who is on the right track. There, anybody else, 99.9% of the time, somebody's going to work on a Snapple commercial or something, and it's going to be the same thing. And even if they do ask questions, it's going to be, how do I get represented? You had very specific industry-related questions that I'm sure even they were like, I don't know, I'll have to like look that up.
Well, yeah, it was invaluable. And I did that multiple times. I did it in Toronto, I did it in New York, I did it in LA. Like, I never stopped doing it.
I did a
Interesting.
workshop here in New York with a major on-screen casting office, and at the end of it, you get like a one-on-one with these two incredible women who are so well regarded, and you get like an hour to pick their brain about anything. So when I came in and they were like, Adam, how, did you enjoy the workshop? And I was like, yes, it was blah, 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 blah. Okay, are you guys ready? Because I have so many questions that, you always think like, God, I wish I could just ask the source this question
Yes.
instead of, I think hearing it from the horse's mouth is so important, and it's so rare in this industry. So when you do ever get the opportunity, and it's to just take advantage of that and just say, do you mind? And yeah, it's like you're saying, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah,
incredible.
and I think, talking to your friends who are actors, it's not the same getting the information from them. And so when
Yeah.
you said, getting the information from the horse's mouth, it really is. You are speaking to a professional who is up there. You're not just talking to your friend who maybe has part of the information, but it's also clouded by their judgment and what their perception is and what the narrative they've created. You're really getting it from that person's perspective, which I think is helpful.
Yeah.
So what about when things maybe weren't going so smoothly? Were there droughts? And if so, what happened during them? How did you get out of them? How did you endure them? What were the things that kind of popped you out of it?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think with any performer, there's ups and downs with your career, right? Where you're super busy and then you have nothing. And then even people who are, huge, it's like George Clooney, it's like, oh gosh, I have nothing going on right now for a whole year. And I've definitely gone through that. And I think, especially for voiceover, where I have the quantity of work, the quantity of auditions that I do, like say I'm doing anywhere from say 4 to 8 auditions a day. And I hear nothing for like I'll do all of these. It's like sometimes 60 auditions a week and I hear nothing and you just feel like god, I'm outputting and you're not getting anything back. So you really have to find a way to get something back for yourself, something that you enjoy, you're in control of. And so that's why I think it's so important to have hobbies and things that you love to do that fulfill you in a different way. And for me that's the number one thing.
Yeah, a break away from everything, a distraction from the thing that we're so obsessed about, is essential. I mean, it changed everything for me when I was meditating and I heard the words "abandon the obsession," and it changed everything for me because it's exactly what I needed to hear. I was getting that message over and over and over again. And the obsession is so true with all of us. We are so obsessed about this thing for good reason. It gives us life. It allows our spirit to just blossom and allows life to just be better than normal. It enhances everything. But if we can fall into that trap of being so obsessed, the 60 auditions, the 20 takes for my self-tape, the weeks on weeks spending time trying to get to an agent and all that stuff, you do that for a long time, you start to miss out on life. And that is the greatest poison to an actor, is missing out on life. So I have nothing to emote from. I've got nothing in here because I have no life other than just the constant pursuit and hustle.
That's it. It brings all of these other things that you do brings so much to your work. And I think that you sometimes miss that. You sometimes just like, I don't have time to join a tennis club, or I don't have time, I've got to be open to auditions and I've got to be able to prepare. And it's like, you don't have time not to, because that is going to inform the work that you're doing. And by the way, do you know who else plays tennis? A lot of other people in the industry, a lot of executives in the industry, a lot of people who you can also be building relationships with. So it's, a lot of, I've met so many people that have been in my industry from things outside of my industry. And then you build relationships and then, hey, I want to do a project together. And so, I just recorded a new video game called Flow Weaver that was just released a couple of weeks ago. And it was from a connection I made from a theater project I had worked on in Toronto that I was connected with. I was doing this theater project that I was producing. I love to, my side thing is producing. I love producing and creating theater, and that my voiceover career, my theater stuff is just sort of coincides with my voiceover career. It allows me to have the creative, fulfillment and all that sort of stuff. So I love to produce, really just sort of, nitty gritty, small works of art that I can just put up, like an art show or something like that. So I had put together this art show, this very small art show, just one night. And I was connected to this other guy who had this company who was making an app, and we sort of chit-chatted about maybe possibly working together, and then it never panned out. And then 4 years later, he phones me up and he's like, I'm doing a project and we have to hire somebody who is a Canadian, and I have dual citizenship. I'm a Canadian and an American. And so he's like, can you do the voiceover for me for this video game? Yes, absolutely. And so, that is just a great example of how this
Riva,
the guy that you want to connect with. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
I meet a lot of people, pal.
No, so I think that's it. You don't know who you're gonna meet and what's gonna lead to what.
And to have certain things like dual citizenship, and I speak Spanish, and these other things that can add to the back pocket, your Swiss Army knife of things that you can do. So giving yourself plentiful alternative pursuits is very important, but nothing is probably more involved than having a family. Do you have one child?
I have one child, yes.
And I mean, that's a significant component in a lot of people's decisions, whether to build a family or put the acting first. Or it's my belief that once you start having a family, once you start enjoying the fruits of a partnership and having children, that you actually become, it's my belief that you become a better actor because your heart grows so much. You see life in a completely different way. Your perspective just completely transforms because of what you're experiencing. A wonderful rite of passage for any human being. Would you agree that you're building your family has led you to become a more leaner actor?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that the I would say that I know so many women who have had kids and it has made them more successful actor. And I think I also know many women who don't have kids and who have decided that acting they have to put on the back burner until they're at a certain caliber in their career. And I think that's held them back as an actor. And
Interesting.
so I think you have to continue on living your life. You have to continue on. You can't put anything on hold just, because of your career pursuit. I think you have to be moving forward. And I think it just all of it makes you a better creator for sure.
Lovely.
Yeah, for me it's done a lot. I mean, there's been ups and downs, of course. For me, I had a 5-year journey to become a mother. I did fertility treatments for 5 years. So it was quite a journey for me. But I have to say, even with that, I started to share my journey in a blog. And as soon as I did that, that also opened me up to other
Your
women in the
voice is real good. Do you?
no, I just wrote it. I didn't it wasn't voiceover.
They could
But
tell you have a great voice just from your writing, I'm sure.
for
Go
the writing.
ahead.
But I started to connect with other people who were in the industry on that level. And
Right.
so I started to build relationships in my infertility community. And so you just starts bringing people together and bringing artists together. And that was incredible. Some of those relationships. Um, there is a bit of a double standard. Oh, there is not a bit. There is a double standard between, a woman having a baby and a man, because when I had my daughter, so because it was such a long journey to get pregnant, I was high risk. It was a high risk pregnancy. And I ended up in the hospital like 2 months early, 2 months before I was due. My water broke and I ended up in the hospital and I had to be on bed rest. But at the time, I had a lot of contracts. I work with a lot of different networks and companies. And so we had planned strategically to get all of my voiceover done prior to when I was going to give birth. So, I could have some 2 months off. But all of a sudden, late one night, my water broke and here I am in the hospital 2 months early. And I was in the hospital room on bed rest. And then my agent calling, being like, "Are you sure you can't leave just for one day to get to the studio?" Like,
Oh, God.
I can't.
You've
And
never
so,
had a baby, have you?
yeah. So that's a challenge because then they had to hire somebody else. Like the work had to get done. It had, and I don't blame them. It had to get done. So they had to hire someone else. And then I ended up, she came early. My daughter, she was fine, but she was quite small, just over 3.5 pounds. So she had to be in the NICU, in the ICU
Wow.
in the hospital for 2 months. And so here I was again in the hospital with her. And I had got out we just got home from being in the hospital and had this whole ordeal. And I was up for a big job, a big commercial contract. I do a lot of commercials. So I was up for a commercial contract and it ended up, they had all these actors they had put on hold. And then every day it was dwindling. And the night before it was just me and this guy. That was it. They were really deciding whether it was going to be me or this guy. Okay. And at like 8 o'clock at night, my agent called and he said, "The client wants to know what your breastfeeding schedule is like. So
Hey.
they need to know if they book
No, you didn't get the
you."
job. He just wants to know.
He's
Yeah.
just interested.
You're like, ugh.
He
What?
he wants to know what kind of breaks you're going to need. And I said, "Well,
Amazing.
every 3 hours, I'm going to need 20 minutes." And I didn't get the job. And I couldn't help but think it had to do something with that. That, if we hire a Riva, she's great, but gosh, we got a busy day. We got to record 26 commercials in one day. She's going to need a break every 3 hours.
Ooh.
And there's nothing I could do about it. So, there's a double standard between men and women, but, it also makes us women. I mean, that's a whole other tangent. Women our endurance increases and we don't need as much sleep anymore. So we can actually get more work done.
So you talked about two different instances where something was maybe, that carrot was in front of you and then it was gone. As a professional, how do you handle that?
Oh, let it go immediately.
Right.
I don't ever. I mean, I think my agent even gets upset that he's like, "Why aren't you more invested?" Last week, I had been on hold for a job, and he was getting really excited, and then I was like, "Hey, my schedule's filling up. Like, are they still want me to hold these days? I need to know because I have another booking that might want me." And he's like, "Okay, I'll reach out to them." And he called me back, and he's like, "Oh, they're gonna go with somebody else." I was like, "Okay, great." And he's like, "Okay, great. What do you mean, okay, great?" It's like, well,
You're like,
okay.
on to the next one. He's like, no, we lost
Yeah.
it.
At that point, you can't do anything. Like, what's
Nothing. Nothing.
If it's officially you're not getting it, I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't dwell on it. Like, there's no, like, what do you want me to have, like, a mourning period? Like,
What's
then
Riva
we'll just
gonna do?
move on.
Freak out 60 times a day?
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
No time for that.
You just have to keep moving. You have to keep moving forward. And what can you do? You don't know. Like I was up. So I did Toyota last year. And it was a launch of a new car. And I auditioned for Audi, Audi at the same time as Toyota. And the Audi was like a $500,000 campaign. And the Toyota was good. But it was only one launch, one commercial. So it's, probably like a fifth of that or less, a little bit less than a fifth. And I auditioned for them both at the same time. And then Toyota called right away and said, "Okay, we want her." And I said, "Can we wait to hear back to see about Audi first? Because that's really," and they're like, "If we wait to hear back, we could lose this one and then you could have nothing."
Yeah.
So, you have to,
because you can't do both. There's a conflict there. You can't, if they're two beers, two cars, whatever, you can't do it until that spot is finished.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they say booked and blessed, and Riva's like, "Can I be more booked and blessed?"
I'm like, I just want to wait. Come on. And even with the Audi, the casting director had called and said, like, the client really likes Riva, but she's saying it wrong. She's saying Audi wrong. Can she say? Because I was saying Audi. I'm like, Audi, isn't it Audi? We say Audi. No, Audi. They're like, it's Audi. I wasn't. And so they're like, can she? The client likes it, but she needs to re-record it and say it properly because it is the client. It is the company name. So I knew that they were interested, but so I recorded. And so when I got the call about Toyota, I said, can we wait? Like, Toyota, obviously, it's a great spot. And it's really fun. And I really would be very happy with it. But can we wait? And in the end, my agent was like, no, we can't wait because you will lose this job and then you may not have any jobs at all. So I think in that case, you can't hold out. You can't, second guess. You can't, be disappointed or wait around. You just have to go roll with it.
It's tough, with actors. It's like we go so long being so poor.
Yeah.
And then when you have the ability to make this money or that one, it's like, we don't know what to do with that. I mean, it's paralyzing, the idea of losing money, because as an actor, you're in poverty for so long. The fact that you had to say, to that $500,000, it's like beyond anybody's comprehension, but that's the reality.
In the end, they went with a man. So in the end, they weren't even going with a woman anyways. And if I had have hesitated, my agent was right. I would have lost the Toyota gig. So yeah, I think,
it's a good position to be in.
You have to roll with it.
And whoever's going to book something is booking it. Whoever's booking it is supposed to book it. Mm-hmm. So the one you lost before, the one after, it's like, well, maybe that guy has $50,000 worth of credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
and he's struggling. You know, who knows? And it doesn't matter. The fact is, you didn't get it, or he got it, or you got it, and he didn't get it. Forget
and
it.
in the end, I don't even know if they signed that contract, that proposed contract. In the end, who knows whether they just hired somebody and said, we're not 100% sure yet. We're just going to do one commercial at a time. We don't want to commit. So, you
Mm.
know, it's all, you have no idea how things end up panning out, because the way they're presented in the beginning, you never know how they end up going.
And isn't that fascinating, Riva? Do you ever think back to those times when you first moved to New York and you were booking the sessions so that you could ask, and now you are literally going,
Yeah.
Toyota, can we wait? Like, you're the one asking this major
Yeah.
campaign who has cast you if they could just chill out for like 48 hours, because I have to hear about another car commercial.
I
It's
know.
incredible how things come around. But you think back like, wow, I am where I only dreamed of. And it's such a amazing predicament to be in.
It it is, and I do feel, you know, it is. I know that this is not anything I'd ever planned. I'm so lucky that I was able to go down this road that I didn't even know was possible, and it has opened up so like a whole world to me in terms of being able to do so many creative things and doing my own, you know, creative projects and theater work. And I even self-fund, you know, theater things that I want to do because of my voiceover work. But also at the same time, I also have to check myself sometimes, because I do, you know, get to the point where like, I'm not gonna audition for that. Like I get a little bit um too full of myself, and I think that's really important, that when you are at a successful point, because as I said, it always goes up and down. Like for the first part of the pandemic, I had no work probably for like 3 months, zero, which is, you know, huge for me. And so you never know how things are going to be like. And I think so when you are on a high, you have to just check yourself. You still always have to be grateful for the work, and you have to, you know, I don't know if as an actor, if you ever can really be that choosy. I mean, sometimes I pass on auditions, um, but it also because, you know, not, I mean, I try to have a work-life balance and make sure that, you know, I can still pick my daughter up from daycare. And so sometimes I pass, but I try not to. And I try to really be grateful for all of that. And also you want to keep in good standing with your agencies, because if you start passing on this stuff, they're like, oh, I don't really want to work with her. She's not going to, you know, if she's only going to audition for the national campaigns and she's not going to audition for a radio commercial, then I don't want to, you know, I don't want to invest in somebody else.
Yeah,
There's
you got
only
to be
certain,
real selective with backing out of things, or
yeah,
you know, I mean, sometimes you just got to do it to make your reps happy and to continue the
yes,
relationship with not only with you and your rep, but your rep and the casting and the
yes,
you know, the
yes,
casting director, the casting
absolutely,
house, whatever, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Riva, what would you if 12 years ago, it's 2008, you're at Tony and Tina's, you see Riva there. She doesn't have a kid. She doesn't know what the hell she's getting into. What are you going to tell her when you pull her aside? What's something you want to tell your past self about the next 12 years?
Oh my God. It's going to look nothing like what you think it's going to look like. You can make as many goals as you want, and I think goals are important, but just know that you're going to get to the things that you want completely different way than you think you are. And it's all about how you're going to get there, and has nothing to do with actually achieving. I think when you know, when I made goals, and, you know, I was like, had very specific goals. When I finally achieved those goals, I didn't feel any different. It wasn't so exciting. And I realized it had nothing to do with actually checking these goals off. That didn't mean anything. It was the whole in between.
Yeah.
That was the best part.
So well said. And I think we can take that cookie cutter across the board for anybody is It's not going to be how you think. And those things that you think you want are not going to make you happy. It's going to be the things under. It's going to be the people. It's going to be the moments between, those pockets of experiences that enhance the check mark.
Yeah.
It's not the check mark, it's the things around it,
Yeah.
leading up to it, surrounding it. That's lovely. Lovely, lovely.
And do you have any advice for anybody who's thinking about getting into voiceover or,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say if you already have an acting background and you want to diversify and get into voiceover, I would say that, you know, if you want to, for example, put together a studio in your house, one tip I have for you is rent a couple of microphones. Go to your, local music rental place that rents, guitars and microphones and all these things. Rent like 3 or 4 mics, bring them home, test them out, see which one, you like, listen to them, and maybe send them to a friend and say which one sounds good. I think all mics are not the same, so I would say your voice sounds different. So a mic that is good for me is not necessarily going to be a mic that's good for you.
Oh, that's interesting.
I would say if you're going to take a voiceover class, take it with somebody who is established in the industry, not just a voiceover performer, unless you want to work on a very specific, script. But if you really are trying to move into the industry, take class with a casting director, an animation director, somebody who is in the industry in a very reputable way, because the class is not just going to be about you learning about voiceover. It's going to be about you learning how to get your foot in the door. And so don't worry if you're a beginner and you're like, I don't want to make a bad impression. You're not going to make a bad impression. It's not about that. It's just about learning from them, learning about the industry. If you have a good voice, you can't make a bad impression. You're behind a microphone, like, yeah, you screw up some words. It doesn't matter. They expect you to. So I don't think you have to worry about that. And then the third piece of advice would be to think about what part of voiceover. There are so many different categories of voiceover. So which category of voiceover are you interested in? Are you interested in animation, commercial, promo, narration? Because each of them have a very different track to get into.
Yeah.
So I would say, look at your voice, look at what you like to do, and decide which one you want to start in. And then find a casting director in that specific thing, look at, mics for that specific thing, and so forth.
Yeah, because voiceover is such a huge umbrella industry that it's, be specific about what you want to accomplish and where you want to be, because then that will inform so many other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you take care of your voice?
I don't scream.
Marlboros.
No screaming. Taking care of my voice. Okay, so before, I warm up every day. I do generally like a 15-minute warm up. Before a recording, I don't drink anything too cold or anything too hot, room temperature. No, same thing you do as an actor for getting on stage. Like you're not going to be eating any dairy and anything that's going to be chewy in your mouth prior to voiceover. And I think just in general, I keep my neck warm if I'm going outside so that I, don't get overly congested. And yeah, drink lots of fluids and warm water with honey, in the morning if I'm a bit groggy. And keeping wherever you're living in not too dry. I think that's how I overall take care of it.
Lovely. Riva, thank you so much for coming
so
on the
great.
show. Tons and tons of stuff that we took from talk. Is there anything that you want to plug, something that's coming up in the near future that we can hear about?
I would love to. I'm actually starting my own podcast. So I've never done a podcast before, but I am starting my own podcast, and it is called Womanhood After Motherhood. And it
Aw.
is about women unearthing and reclaiming their non-mothering femininity after becoming a mom. So I just released the trailer, and the first episode will be launching. I'm going to be interviewing moms from around the country. It's going to be launching at the end of April, April 26th. But you can find me wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and it's under Womanhood After Motherhood, and on Instagram at Womanhood After Motherhood.
If you need any voiceover tips, ask Adam. He'd be more than happy to. Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Riva.
Thanks so much,
Riva,
guys.
where can we find you online?
Oh, yes, I am at rivalombardi.com. And yeah, you'll see on that website, I have a theater side and a voiceover side. And yeah, just click over to my voiceover side and you can find everything about me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. It was so wonderful to catch up with you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. Great talking to you. Have a great day.
You
Bye,
too.
Riva.
Bye.